History is about to be created because of Trump's policies, and I think you should buy at least 3,500 XRP. Today I'll explain why I think that's the case and why this week is likely to be the largest one in a long time. These are the main things that are taking place right now. On Monday, we could expect the reciprocal reactions regarding Trump's tariffs. Wednesday is the Fed meeting minutes. Thursday is the March CPI inflation, and Thursday is the first day of the unemployment claims statistics, and Friday's release of the March PPI inflation report. In essence, we will be aware of the current status of the U.S. economy, the Fed's intended response to it, and the reactions of other nations to Trump's new tariffs. These all have a significant impact on the price movement of XRP in the future, and I'm going to tell you guys that I believe it will be much better than most people are expecting. Why am I feeling that way now? Well, it appears that the messaging from a few different nations who have already publicly responded to Trump's tariffs is going somewhat well. India says that in order to get around President Trump's tariffs, they would negotiate a new balanced trade agreement with the U.S. India is currently a major player in this since it is a huge industrial hub that is somewhat similar to China, but China currently dominates India in that area. Here's the thing, though. The problem with the geopolitical tensions between China and India is that they have been terrible for a long time, and if they can't be resolved, India may be trying to fill the void that China will leave behind. China, the world's largest economy, is currently responding extremely aggressively to the U.S. economy by hiking tariffs and depending on its other international ties to effectively cover the gap. However, China is playing ball here, which is likely due to their rivalry with China. Therefore, this could be the answer. Trump is seeking to distance himself from China and strengthen his relationship with India. This would be advantageous for both parties because it would require Trump and India to essentially remove their tariffs completely, which appears to be what India wants to do. It would also allow for another economic boom because jobs in India are now significantly less expensive than they were in China. I am aware that many Trump supporters are adamant about all manufacturing being done in the United States. Although I think this is a terrific endeavor, I also understand that this gap needs to be addressed in the short term because it will take a few years for the United States to properly prepare and resume manufacturing, and this could be the answer. In order to escape President Trump's tariffs, Vietnam is now also promising to erase all duties on U.S. imports. Thus, Vietnam is included in addition to India. I will say that Vietnam's tariffs on the United States of America were wholly unwarranted, and I think this is a terrific move for both of these countries. The fact that they imposed taxes on US-based items and those from India at levels as high as 80% was completely absurd. I do respect both of these countries for coming out and at least acknowledging that there was some sort of deficit. They had a lot of tariffs to protect their local sector, but now they realize it was not fair or balanced. That is an excellent first step in the correct direction. Additionally, following Trump's imposition of the 46% duty, Vietnam has now written to offer to withdraw the levies. As we can see, party leader Tho Lam made the offer in a letter to the U.S. president that Bloomberg was able to view. In the letter, Lam asked the U.S. to delay the imposition of the tax that Trump announced last week by at least 45 days after April 9th, when it was supposed to take effect, and to refrain from imposing any extra tariffs or fees on Vietnamese imports. The Vietnamese economy will be totally destroyed, which is why Vietnam is frantically approaching Trump here, but there is one important issue Vietnam needs to consider. It makes no sense for Trump to postpone these duties until Vietnam immediately lifts its own and begins purchasing more American-made goods, as they have been abusing the U.S. with enormous deficits for a very long period. I believe Trump won't have any issues if they forward with this. The goal of Trump's tariff policy is to eliminate the deficit. If they are successful in doing so, more businesses will come to the U.S., less will be stolen from the U.S., less money will be spent, fewer resources will be used, and the trade agreement will be much more balanced, exactly what the U.S. needs right now. According to an Indian government official, India is negotiating a bilateral trade agreement with the U.S. and is not likely to retaliate against President Trump's tariffs right away. According to that person, India is concentrating its efforts on forging a bilateral trade agreement and is unlikely to retaliate right away against Donald Trump's tariff imposition. The insider added that India has a first-mover advantage over rivals in the region, most likely alluding to China, and that the South Asian nation is preferring discussion rather than confrontation. According to the source, India intends to strive for a fair trade agreement with the U.S. You may be wondering how any of this relates to XRP, and the answer is quite a bit. You can see how the markets react each time the tariff fights begin or end, as well as each time a bullish geopolitical statement that eliminates tariffs occurs. The markets are benefiting greatly from it, and as you can see, insiders are profiting from trading on this information. As you can see, this is really crazy. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan, sold $234 million worth of stock on February 20th. Warren Buffett revealed a record cash position of $334 billion on February 22nd. After 30 trading days, the Nasdaq 100 fell by 24%. So how were these individuals aware that this would occur? Why do they have these deals scheduled so perfectly before of these announcements? You can view the timeline right here. After all, Jamie Dimon is liquidating his stock. Trump claims not to be keeping an eye on the market. After Warren Buffett accumulates $34 billion in cash, the auto tariffs and retaliatory tariffs are imposed a few days later, and the Nasdaq formally enters bear market territory. It appears that many insiders possess knowledge that the majority of us do not. You can see that over the years a lot of people have been watching Jamie Dimon's purchases and sales of JPM. Additionally, they are typically thought of as a leading sign for the market as a whole. Since Dimon's sale, JPM has dropped 25%. The most since 2022. This is the second significant 2020 Dimon pivot. The first was when Dimon joined CNBC during the pandemic in May and stated that JPM was extremely valuable in the midst of the crash. JPM has increased by 41% in just 3 weeks. Multiple tops and bottoms is the term for Dimon. In other words, he sold a significant portion of it for the stock market because he believes it to be the peak, at least for the time being. And throughout this time frame, we've witnessed a number of cryptocurrencies do really well, but afterwards, of course, we've seen them plummet significantly today. As of right present, I believe that the stock market will keep separating from the cryptocurrency markets. Since manufacturing and banking in particular profit directly from all of this international trade, I believe that the stock markets are actively implicated in these commercial disputes. These will be the most affected, particularly the bank stocks, correct? We will witness the complete collapse of bank stocks, as well as the collapse of some U.S. sectors and the success of others. It goes without saying that businesses like Apple, Nike, and others who outsource their manufacturing to countries like China will be decimated by this, but Americans who work in manufacturing there will prosper. Local steel producers and those in the oil and gas sector in particular have a lot to look forward to. The Fed will eventually be forced to lower rates, which will increase market liquidity, but I believe that consumers will continue to invest in alternative fiat systems that are not directly manipulated, because you can't really trust these at the moment. This is essentially what we saw back in 2021 as well. As a result, many more businesses will go to certain industries, while others will be completely destroyed. People poured their money into Bitcoin, XRP, and other cryptocurrencies when the Fed lowered interest rates, and they went completely crazy. I believe this will happen in a very similar way. Additionally, we're witnessing the movement of an astounding 267 million XRP, worth roughly $572 million, to unidentified wallets. There are whales in the XRP community at the moment, and if there's ever a time when you should be paying attention, it's when these whales are active. They are simply moving the XRP about, switching it between wallets, and making sure they have it in the proper location. They are not selling any of it. In reality, this was a transfer of cold storage. What does that signify? Well, this man intends to keep this XRP for a very long time. He isn't really moving it to an exchange, is he? No, he's simply saying, all right, I'm just going to hold this for the long term, and placing it in cold storage. He possesses XRP worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That is completely crazy. Therefore, I believe that if he continues in this manner, it conveys a very obvious message. From both my perspective and these whales' perspective, the long-term outlook for XRP appears to be quite stable. Why, in my opinion, should everyone purchase at least 3,500 XRP prior to April 10th? I do believe that similar to today, there will be a lot of volatility in the days ahead, which will give you guys plenty of chances to regularly buy these dips. Therefore, if you regularly purchase XRP at prices below $2, and it finally rises to even $2.50 after April 10th, which incidentally I do believe is very likely, you will earn a substantial amount of money, and I hope all of you succeed. I want you all to succeed, and to receive the greatest entries available at every stage of the market. For this reason, you should definitely join my trade club, Crypto Crusaders, which is free for everyone. You may access all of my entries where we're now making a ton of money, selling those tops and purchasing those bottoms. That's the name of the game, and joining is as simple as 3 steps. Simply register on one of our partner exchanges, which also offer fantastic benefits. The second step is to deposit at least $100 in cryptocurrency, which you can then transfer from any exchange you are currently using. After that, you will receive an email with your exchange user ID and email address, which will give you access to my Telegram and Discord. You can then begin copying my trades and earn up to 400% each month. Guys, don't pass up this opportunity. Together, let's earn a lot of money. Join the Crypto Crusaders to ensure that you're starting to accumulate XRP at the appropriate time. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.